Let's see if I can make sense of this, um, and how it branches. So, cannabis, I was just thinking, is it's kind of a handicap in a way. Like, there's the idea that souls eager to come into this planet for the experience actually like the idea of coming in with a handicap because it really gives them something to focus on. You know, I had a friend who she used the word diffuse. She said, you know, the reason I like to be in a relationship with you or somebody, like a primary relationship, is because she says it, otherwise she felt too diffuse. In other words, ideas scattering too much, and so it brings it into focus. So, yeah, focus. What to focus on of all the things to focus on. So in a way you could say, the weird thing about cannabis is that you can't say it's just one thing. In fact, as another side journey, cannabis, every time you do it, it might present differently. So just that fact presents a challenge. Like it offers you a challenge. It says, okay, maybe you're at neutral, or maybe you're a little bit at some place you don't like being. And this may help you move out of it by offering you a different perspective, changing the rate of processing, maybe slowing things down a little bit, you know, shifting. It offers a shift, and the shift isn't predictable, you know. So it offers a surprise. It's unpredictable. There's a part of the mind that kind of likes things predictable. And there's something satisfying about being, you know, steady, getting sort of a rhythm, and then kind of fine tuning or doing variations within the rhythm. That's something kind of interesting, like you're working on the thing. Like it's kind of Groundhog's Day, but you kind of like it. But it's similar, you know, every day is like, okay, similar stuff, some variation. So then you add cannabis to it, and cannabis is more variation. The thing is, though, it can also ride you way down. After being very up and euphoric, you can feel extracted, you know, depleted. I do. And that's another opportunity, frankly. You know, it's an opportunity for someone who's sort of even keel to be able to really go deep into like really grumbling, really being upset, really, you know, stopping around and just not quite seeing the sense of any of it, you know. So sort of just a bother, you know, of groping, you know, grabbing for straws, groping for what, you know? Some focus. What focus? What needs to be focused on? So cannabis also can kind of just say, well, you don't know what to focus on, so here I'm just going to throw a lot of opportunity to focus by sort of activating the receptors in some novel way. Or maybe it's just expectation. You're hoping to see something differently. So cannabis gives you like a little switcheroo to like suddenly see things differently. So then you may stop and savor. It's funny. I've sort of felt that one of my exercises or focuses this life would be just to savor. I'd like to have a life of savoring. And that's kind of why I like the idea of traveling. You know, it's a very naive view of traveling. You just sort of, and I did do it for a while, where I just walked with very little, hardly a backpack, you know, and just, you know, plain clothes, you know, kind of your mild-mannered 60-year-old man walking along the road and just being in the world. I'm walking and I'm just in the world, just walking. And I don't have a job and I don't have a car. I have hardly anything. I'm just walking, just not caring if I live really or not. And just for once being unfettered, Joni Mitchell's got that dang song, unfettered and alive, unattached. Just in the world, no job, no family needing me. Just going, at my age, at 60. I mean, I'm 67 now. So, yeah, so the cannabis thing, I've been playing with it since high school. And, what I really think is I thought it might make me, extra something, extra homo superior, David Bowie sings about, although he might have a different agenda than that. I'm not quite sure about him. He was certainly attractive and had a talent for drawing attention, right? Drawing attention. I think he just liked to tell stories. So, and he liked to act them out too. He liked to be the actor and the singer and the storyteller, the cracked actor. Yeah, kind of the opposite to me. Like, I've stayed kind of steady in a lot of ways. I've done some changing, but not like David Bowie. All that external, changing his hairstyles and all that stuff. What a guy. What an attention getter. I could do that. We could all do that. Dress up crazy and, I don't know. He was quite a promoter, though. And maybe the inside of something. The inside of some great machine that creates culture, steers culture, moves culture around, influences culture. Like there's this idea that the Beatles were constructed. This is the great question, is like, what's constructing all of this stuff? How did we get constructed so we hardly even know the equipment because it's so complicated? How did the social systems get constructed so that, what are they feeding on? What's feeding them? And how much is just zooming around on all these invisible levels, and ideas suddenly come in and we start acting them out. So programs get in and suddenly you're acting a program. And it's all these programs acting out. And there's recurring ones. And there's ones that seem like they're the steady one. And then other ones are kind of coming in. They dive in and out of that steadiness. So there's sort of a steady thing in a way. Or maybe there's just the observer. And somehow there's an observer that's back of all of this falderall, all this sweeping in of thoughts and emotions and intentions. And it's very whimsical, and it seems very real, like I'm really me. And what is that, And what will that be in the next minute? And is there any continuity that you can really feel verified about? Or is it just kind of a fluid dynamic of thought form play? And the mind of the whole thing, whatever you call that thing, the mind of allness, awareness, manifestable awareness, that urge, that cleverness, it's just pitching stuff around like it's super in position, somehow knowing it all it must, because it's all the one thing being itself, right? And somehow it has these clever ways of interacting, And it has clever ways of surprising itself. So, we may think it's the Russians, but it's really some It's some other thought form, scriptwriter thing that's like making stuff happen. And who knows how it's planting different seeds of thought references. Like it's just got this fascination with playing opinions off of each other. But then it's also really difficult to be confronted. Like we end up becoming sort of the puppets to be in the confrontation with other downloads of points of view. And suddenly you've got two beings with all these different downloads and they're trying to, figure out what the fuck they're doing, and then what the fuck's the other one doing, and what are we doing with all these downloads, all these points of view. It's yikes. It's really diffuse. There's that word again. It's diffuse-ish. Ununiting. Diffuse. I guess that's what that means. Who knows what all these words mean? Who knows what we're doing? For me, it's kind of fun, I guess, to put into words. I like to put thoughts into words. Explain things. Sum things up. So if someone tells me their story, you go, oh, so your story is basically this and this and this and this and that. And so I want to kind of, make some kind of verbal presentation of their verbal presentation. It's just it's a way of mirroring back, I guess. Like that's the place. Like, okay, you're going to throw me all this stuff, and I'm going to arrange it and say this is what it looks like, and that may be a new way to look at it. Like we're all just God or awareness or whatever. It's all just pitching points of view around. And it's just breathtaking how much gets pitched. I mean, if you can imagine there's even 1 billion. I mean, we don't really know the numbers on the planet. Bill Gates, who knows these people, what they're really telling us. History is largely fabricated, right? So that seems to be part of the fun too, for the creator, for the one mind to hoodwink itself into all kinds of collapses of storylines into complete nonsense and make-believe. I mean, it's all make-believe anyway, so we're only guilty of make-believe. That's it. God is guilty of the original sin of make-believe. And exactly, making believe. He's making up beliefs. It. I do like to have sort of this idea that there is a sort of larger God guy, I kind of like it's a guy, but you can do women, whatever. It's all just playing with qualities. Really, another way to look at it is we're just playing with qualities. We're all like this week I came up with this idea that we're all, aside from the faces on everybody just kind of a bag of flesh with proclivities, preferences, agendas, slightly differently tweaked mechanisms. I like this, I don't like that, tolerance ranges and shit. But we're all the same we're all these funny contraptions, and we got a face on it. And then the face becomes like, there's something about faces, right? If you're facing somebody, yikes, that could be a lot. Gets to be so personal and so soap opera-ish. We're all these soap opera characters. And that's the delight of God. I mean, you wonder how many eons the originator of manifesting all kinds of stuff came up with this kind of stuff. Where now I'm talking to other parts of me because it's all the one. And I'm in a little trailer and I'm talking through my phone and I just know barely enough to be able to do this. Like, here's a story. So the second house we lived in Redlands, Southern California. This must have been back around 1961 or something. We lived in this temporary house while our house up above the golf course was being built up on Los Altos Drive. And so we lived in this temporary house while I guess the other house got sold. And that house is fine to me. I don't see why we had to move from that house. Right? They didn't ask me though. I'm just, a kid, I'm 4 or 5. Oh, we're just moving. No, I guess I must have been more than that. Yeah. Like it might have been more like, gosh, 8 or 9 or something. I have some sense to me because of the story I'm telling here. So anyway, one day I'm coming out of that second house. And I'm coming out through the garage door into the garage. And there's my brother there, and he's my older brother there, Michael. And he's got this, it was Mike at the time. There was no Michael yet, it was just Mike. Right? Mike, Steve, and Bob, right? And so there was this, what I remember was like a station. It was something on a stand, maybe it was just a card table or something. It looked like smaller though, like a small kind of table stand thing that he had this chemistry set on. And I was kind of walking out to go for a walk, and I looked over to the side, and I saw him there with this, just at a glance, right? And just glancing at it. And I'm seeing, the complications of all this chemistry stuff. And it's one of those memories, we have these memories, right? I bet other people do too, where they keep coming back, and you keep referring to this. Like, there's a lot of stuff we don't remember, but there's some stuff we really super remember. So this one I remember, and it keeps being like something I go, oh, why did I know that? And how is that a clue? Like, it was kind of a clue. Like, awareness was enough itself, which is like unbounded, and it knows the thing, because it is the thing. Like, an awareness is all over it. It knows the shit. It's in all the shit. It's made up all the shit. And then I like to pretend it's like new awareness in this old shit. Like, suddenly a vagina is a big deal, and God's been making vaginas for like who knows how many forever. Is like, and he keeps tweaking them, right? And then we come along with sort of somewhat blank slate, and then programming comes in from the culture, and then we make a big honk out of the sex thing. It's funny. Anyway, so that was a kind of aside, I don't know why, to I'm coming out of the garage and I'm looking over there at Michael's set of chemistry stuff, and I'm just going, no. But it wasn't even that much. What was it like exactly? It was like some knowing. They was just looking over there and going, like, yep, I know that part of the scale, and I'm not doing it. And then I walked out, and I think what I did at those times, as I recall, is I just went for these walks, like sort of Adam, in nature, the Adamic man that was kind of pre-sophistication of thought, just being on Earth. Just walking along and going through, we had eucalyptus groves and stuff. I don't know how, it was neat though. There were these like ravine things. They call them arroyos here, sort of, at the Big Bend area. And these were just kind of overgrown, small valley things, I guess, that were off the sides of where people lived. Like the people lived kind of above. There was, the houses, the tracks were like on some smooth thing, and then there's all this rubble off to the side that was not funny. Like, it's just sort of pitch nature off to the side while you stamp in, the nice flat areas where you're going to build these containers, like I live in a container. Although my container's movable if somebody really wanted to, apparently. It's funny. It's aluminum. I wonder if aluminum is saving me from bad vibrations like 5G radiation or something, because it's aluminum. It's like I'm living in my tinfoil hat. It's an aluminum trailer. funny about that? Like, is that some sort of a safety zone? The universe is trying to keep me safe so I can keep living in this crazy land of diffuse thought forms, looking for containers to mess with. And that's it. It's just kind of a funny, big, almost slapstick. But then it can be very deeply cloying and bothersome, grieving, painful. You know, like the mind of whatever all this is just so used to doing shit. I mean, over just fathoms of time, really. Figure it. You know, we talk about history of humans, but really the history of consciousness, to consciousness itself being aware that it can do stuff, it can make stuff up. So that it makes like just crazy, amazing stuff, like humans, like a human hand, you know, human lips, human nose, eye, human eyes. Yeah, the human eye. It's just, you know, I mean, I'm just this kind of guy muddling through, and I've got these eyes that, you know, wow. Just the eyes are amazing, right? Yeah, so I did, there's complexity, and then back to that chemistry set of my brothers. He was all, you know, enthusiastic to get his little hands on all that sophistication, and I was like, eh. And so I wanted to just kind of, you know, feel my way through nature, sort of in some sort of peaceful way, like just being in the world, just peacefully going, you know. Just being in the world, you know, just the feeling of being unfettered, just present in the world, like feeling the sun and feeling the earth. And it's funny how that really isn't enough, though, is it? I mean, it's great. It's worth practicing. It's like fundamentally the value of being here. Like if there's good stuff to get, if we're going for the good stuff, because the good stuff is worth all the hassle, because there's a lot of hassle too. Then it's like, and sometimes it's this little. So I work here at this, I would say museum, this motel. And it's like 40 units, and it's a funny old, like, kind of museum. It's, you know, from the 70s and 80s. And we're just kind of propping it up, you know. I'm propping myself up at my age. And sometimes I'm driving this work truck, and I'll be like, a lot of times sort of the on switch is on, and I'm just driving like, you know, this good little worker bee, and I'm like really trying to be efficient and like do everything good and save time and be efficient, you know, be useful, get you done, you know. And that's kind of almost a simple mind in itself. It's like a simple thing, just going through, grabbing the laundry and, you know, seeing what people left and handling the trash and organizing the truck and going to the, you know, trash bins, all of it. It's just like, it's sort of a simple, kind of like Groundhog Day. You know, you're doing this every day. It's good for the body. It's stimulating in sort of a domestic resources kind of a way. You know, it's containable. It's not that difficult. And, you know, it affords me a place to live, and, you know, I'm useful. While I'm trying to figure out what the fuck. What am I really doing with these sophisticated eyes and this sophisticated brain and this sensing that somehow I'm the thing. I'm the universe at large. You know, and what am I doing? What am I doing with this thing? And I kind of feel like I'm here to want to see sort of the whole world, you know, like, how's the world really doing this time around? Like, you know, we've done it so many times. Oh, here's the world. And now it's at this part of the storyline. Because it like Groundhog Day, the earth has its own repetitions too, apparently. Like all these stories are just they gain momentum and they keep playing. They're just endless stories, and they fractal off from each other in all kinds of subdivision stories. So you can watch 5 soap operas in a row, and then they're producing their own story simultaneously. All these stories are being produced, and somehow we're just suckers for all this stuff, and it's exhausting. It's intimidating. It's irritating. Often it's petty. You look at a lot of the stuff that humans are doing, it's pretty petty stuff. I mean, pretty rudimentary. Although pretty clever, pretty sophisticated too. So you can't just say. Like we do petty in very sophisticated ways, you might say. Or they're very simple, sort of, they're clunky in a way and cliche storylines. But then you find ways to put the razzmatazz on or something, dress it up different, Rock and roll with lipstick, right? Do something different. So, yeah, so differences, right? It's a lot about differences. Making a difference. That's a funny one, isn't it? Make a difference. Don't make a sameness, because sameness is like the enemy. Really? Isn't it? Sameness is like almost like oneness. It's all one. All the good guys, all the bad guys, it's all one. It's all just oneness, pretending it's different stuff. And we know it. We must, because we're it. We must all know it. We all know it deeply, 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 because in the deep hollows of everything is just oneness going, oneness. Ever at home in oneness. Everywhere in oneness. While also being able to play these characters that are sort of befuddled, befuddled in oneness. That's a new one, isn't it? Befuddled in oneness. In a way, I'm super embarrassed and frustrated, ashamed that I'm 67 and I don't have any big pat on the back, really. I mean, I had 2 kids, and that was something. I played nice. That was good. And they're seemingly doing fine for now, knock on wood. It's a dangerous planet. But nothing like the American dream is like, and plus just the ego dream sort of in ways like amounting to something, right? Like you come out of high school like, okay, I definitely know I don't know anything. Shit. And then you figure after a year or 2 or 5 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, going on 50, you think, well, I should have some wisdom. I should have some confidence. I should have something to show for myself. Like it's some sort of weird time-sensitive thing. Come to the world and you've got this much time to what? Maybe that's it. Is everything is just, ways and ways. It's all waves. That's a simple way to look at it. Push something one way, it's going to want to push the other way. So that's kind of sets up duality. And then I was thinking the other day, actually, that flowers are another good example of waves, where they come up in a wave of expansion and manifestation and flowering and completion, and then they fade. And then that thing is like a wave that happens yearly, right? And some things do it repeatedly. Like the grass, you got grass in your yard and it's growing out. It's always feeling life forces is coming from under the ground going, life just wants to kind of emerge, right? So it's always emerging. And so then, you whack it off because you mow your lawn, which is kind of funny, cartoonish. And then, so that, can you imagine, your grass on some of the I don't know how it works. Consciousness has manifest grass as a function that's perpetually, trying to regrow itself, and then you cut it off and it'll still regrow. Now it reseeds too, so it's sort of like, and this is the question now with humans, right? Because humans have emerged and they have this impulse to grow and flower and blossom. That can take decades of all kinds of resource grab and franticness and competition and shit. And think of like how many people doing that elbow to elbow in the world, figuratively. And then it becomes an issue like, are the elite right? There's too many people on the planet, hint, hint. They come up with dumb excuses like they call it global warming, which is kind of cutely misdirecting, but opportunistic. And that seems to think, who can hoodwink who? This seems to be the deal. What is going to grab attention? What make-believe is going to grab attention and steer culture? That's the game. And actually, attention is being steered all day in all kinds of ways. A lot of it's cultural, and it comes through social media and neighbors, the news, alternative news, all this stuff. And who knows how much that is make-believe. I mean, the mind of God must know, okay, this is all make-believe. Literally. It's all make-believe. We can make it whatever we want. We. I can call myself a we. And there can be we now. Because I've decided to make we. I, the one consciousness, of which we all are. We all are. I all are. I all are everywhere. I and I. Isn't that a Rasta thing? Got a little Rasta giveaway. It's interesting how much we remember oneness and how much we want to forget it. Because it kind of spoils the party, in a way. But it doesn't have to. I mean, it's kind of neat if awareness really knows that it's looking at itself. Everything is looking back at oneness, and it's all oneness. Just going, well, here I am. Everywhere. So then it makes up these weird scenarios like what we're in now. Like there's this super, what do you call them? A storyline of a special group of people that feel like their God has told them that everybody else in the world should be destroyed. Now that's a great storyline, don't you think? I mean, if you're the mind of God and you're like really bored because you've done all kinds of stories before, some were really nice and really idyllic and really just chill, just beautiful and simple and easy and fantastic. And, imagine doing that for like a couple forevers. And you're like, okay, I got it. I got ease and I got predictable and I got chill. And all sensuality and all that. When it's all just lights on and go 100%, and there's not any interference, there's nothing to risk getting in the way, it just always is. So I think that must have gotten old. That's my theory. And so then I've got some recall, and who knows what that came from. Was that an implant? Was that a holographic dream insertion program? I was given a program that I chose this life, this world, that apparently you were both in. I'm talking to consciousness in where? Where am I talking to consciousness? I'm just talking to consciousness now through this phone. Who knows what's going to intercept it? Is it all being intercepted while I'm talking to some direction? Right? So it's just the mirror ball in every different kind of way of reflecting. infinite mirror balls, infinite mirrors reflecting. The one thing that now has gotten to this point where it's made this funny world where there's like just weird characters like, Donald Trump or Putin, or so many of these characters are Fauci, Gates. They're cringy. There's a real cringiness to the characters now. They're really cartoonish. They almost seem like God is completely bluffing now. God, awareness. Like awareness is like, Shakespeare. And it's like, okay, how do I make something interesting to do because I got fucking forever? And so, make up the Yuga cycles. I'll make up the Yuga cycle. The Yuga cycle is like, depending on who you count as knowing the right count, it's like 1/4 is 144,000 years. And now we're kind of at the bottom of the belief in separation mode, and we're kind of climbing back to the other way, but we might be still pretty much in the separation's real. Like I kind of really like the idea of being separate this life. I wanted to come into this world because it's an interesting time. For some reason, I didn't quite know why. I didn't know what the big transition was going to be, or the big something, the big storyline, the big theme, which seems to be a repetitive theme. Like I almost sculpted it like I sculpted this chemistry set. Scoffing at the world. Like imagine being infinite consciousness that just realizes it's hanging out in a special make-believe thing it's made, and it's making up all kinds of make-believe all over the place. Shit, who knows how much make-believe it's got in its Akashic fucking records, right? And it stores them. In fact, I think sometimes we're in the world to just grab a lot of experience, even if it's horrible experience. Just grab all kinds of experience. Doesn't have to make any sense. Just grab. Because we're walking like, taking in all this stuff. And if you can get back to the memory, there's a cute memory there that maybe is like totally storable. I don't know. Like it's trying to make a reference material for making new stories. And it's just hungry like a wolf, persistent like I'll get out. Willing to keep tinkering. Because what else is there? You're either tinkering with all that is, or you're sleeping it off. Those are the two options, I think. Those are essentially the two, that's the main dualism, shall I say. The main dualism I've come up with as the I, and the one and only I of all I's, because there's only one I. There's only one. There's only one oneness. Although it can make of itself many onenesses if it would like, and justify clearly, no, there's not just one, there's many, there's a multiplicity of onenesses, yeah. And then, depending on how you want to focus, that's the play. The more you focus towards multiplicity, you get that kind of thing going, right? And that's a lot of diffuseness. Or you come back the other way, you're just one. You're just nothing, essentially. You have no conditions upon which to be worried about anything. You're just the state of rest. And I think we do that every day. We go back to the state of rest, more or less, and sleep, and then we come out of the state of rest and allows activity during the day, and then we kind of lose track of that, or we lose power. We can sort of run out of the battery and get cranky, and you get to sleep. And then it becomes untenable. It's funny how it's been made as almost like a breath. Like you have the day becomes like a breath. You breathe the day in, and this in-breath allows you to kind of, chase the balloon around all day. And then, the balloon finally loses its breath, and it's got to go restore. Restoration. Right? Rebirth. The Jesus story is kind of like a big rebirth drama. We like to make things very dramatic. you know. Like essentially it's just transformation, right? It's just energy changing forms. So my art's kind of like that. I'm taking stuff that's changing forms, changing context, and hanging out with other forms that are changing form and context, and then they just hang out with each other, and they represent the weird kind of loopy spaghetti factory mind of all that is that's hanging everything together somehow. Together in superposition, you might say. I like that word. I don't know why I don't know what it really means, superposition. But it kind of gives me this idea. Everything's kind of suspended in its own space. It's in its own orbit of, actualities. And so, you can throw yourself really far into that, and back to cannabis can like invite you back in. Like I get to be sort of, part of my mode is I want to be just sort of like one of my practices I'm doing, because we seem to be doing lots of practices, but one of them is, can I just sort of be in the middle? God in the middle of creation. Of course, we're always in the middle. It's kind of funny when you think about it twice. Like I'm kind of the master of thinking about things twice. Reflect upon the thing and go, wait, what was that thought I just had? Where did that come from? Yeah. Then do a sort of like looking reference to the incoming perception, which you can do infinitely too. There's all these places for attention to go. It's really mind-blowing. The Big Bang was really just mind-blowingness, maybe. God blowing its mind. So now I'm yawning, and it is a 10, and I've talked a lot, and this is now going on 41 minutes. And I really just wanted to talk about cannabis to start with. And also I was playing with the idea of, having something to show for myself, I guess you might say. Come what may, whatever it amounts to, this is some representation of what I've come to so far. And I wanted to do that kind of loose. I didn't want to have it too scripted. Like, I don't want to really try too hard. That's another one of my things. Try not to try too hard. It's very easy, Planet, to try very hard. Like I try too hard just doing housekeeping and stuff. It's funny. It gets very revvy. You get very caught up in sort of mania. I can see why they've got this manic depressive. It's a funny way that they make it a sort of clinically significant by calling it manic depressive. But essentially, it's like I said, we tend to expand out and we're all activating, and then we kind of contract back in because, that's what it does. It expands and then it has to let go of the expansion. It pushes out and then it's got to be relieved of the push. And that comes down really right down to sex or speaking, or even eating, taking in with your eyes. It's all, you're taking in, then you got to kind of digest it. You take a movie in, then you've got to rest. Take a day in, and then you got to rest. Seems like it's like some sort of a wheel of some kind of a thresher in this engulfing thing. Or toroidal is another way of looking at it, right? But that's more like a donut. It's doing from all these circles around the donut are sucking into the void and then pushing out to creation and then sucking back. So here we are. We're in one of those. We're somewhere on that thing, before we get sucked back into the void or something. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's physical. Maybe it's not even that real because it's all just make-believe. So it can be toroids if it wants to be. It can be anything. Something. Boom, boom, boom. I did salvia once, and it sort of showed me how the whole creation was made. And it showed me how first there was just nothing, and then there was a beat. And then there was another beat. And then it figured out beats in relationship to other beats. And so those beats became rhythms. Beats into rhythms. Repetitions of beats that sort of stay over time. And those become, wavelengths somehow. Somehow, I don't know the transition. Beats to wavelengths. And wavelengths to, frequencies of waves. And then that becoming so resonant that it becomes solid. It shakes so much, so finally, in these resistance patterns, it becomes manifest in some sort of solid way. I guess. That's the funny thing, we don't know. It's super sophisticated, and we really don't know. And then we do all kinds of funny, dumb stuff like that's okay. Drink too much, eat too much, bad behavior. Oh, what a great planet for bad behavior, isn't it? It's like, come to planet Earth and you can really do bad behavior. You could really be on the side of the devious sophisticates, the mad scientists, mad sociopaths who just want to believe they're superior and decimate all the inferiors. Like A Course in Miracles said, this world it's a world of special hate. That's another one of those things. Like, I've been thinking lately, what do I remember? What do I keep referring to of all this diffuseness, right? And that phrase comes back to mind. And then I lose it. I just tell you stuff that I find and then I lose again, right? I'm going to forget it the next minute, but I can refer to it. It comes to mind. It's coming to mind now. Like, all these ideas are coming to mind. They want to come through me and share with other points of view. That's it. I'm just some repository of points of view. We all kind of bag up these points of view through our lives, and then we pull them out. Oh, yeah, I got this one. I got that one. I go, by the way, this one. And we're just walking around all these references. And it's fascinating, if you have time to really hear people's and let them really say it, like let them get comfortable and start to tell their story. It's pretty cool. Get the download. Not that you can live with them for very long because you're like, this is trouble. I'm not going to stay here long, but it's pretty interesting for a minute, and then you got to get out of Dodge. Because, of course, we're all one, but oneness has become so fantastically able to be irritating. Like the new black is irritation, dread, depression, hopelessness, terror. Just chronic, low-level, everyday anxiety about what the fuck is going to happen next in this weird world. What's going to get me? Is it going to be bugs? Is it going to be germs? Variation on bugs. Is it going to be people who bug me? Is it going to be the government that's going to bug me? What's going to try and get in? And that's the other thing. Like, we're these sort of like closed containers. I am bordered by this skin, and this is me. I'm all this. This containment is me. And I am trying to keep my composure here, trying to be separate. A separate self. And so, in a way, we don't want to be penetrated. In some ways. In other ways, we do. We want to take in the world. So we're kind of like tea bags. We're like flow through. Stuff flows into us or not. We leave a lot out because we don't want all that. But then some of it, we want to let it in. And then how you pick. And sometimes you can. Sometimes it just gets you. A broken leg. Something gets into you and just breaks your leg. And then you deal with that. So the world, you don't have absolute damage control of this thing. It's kind of helter-skelter. And, some of the worst breaks are the best breaks because they become interesting. They become like a handicap. that becomes a focus. So a storyline can somehow emerge within a focus. It's funny how once you break your leg, not that I ever did, but I broke my thumb. How many people have ever told you they broke their thumb? I broke off the tip of my tongue. Well, life broke off. I didn't plan on it. It wasn't like an intention. Life did that to me by a series of, I don't know, did the script writers do that on purpose? All right, cue up. Steve now is going to go through the program of losing the tip of his thumb and yelling horrifically like he's never yelled before. And his life will change after that. He's a little bit less of the cup than he was before he lost the tip of his thumb. And that'll be philosophically interesting for him to deal with for years to come. Let that happen. Like, is it like that? And then I live as an actor who doesn't entirely know his part, but I'm willing to be played or, sort of activated into my part somehow. And then somehow I'm awareness that's localized within this thing, and I'm having this thing's experience in the localization of this vehicle. While other parts of me, because it's all the I, are up there like doing all kinds of strategizing. And just thinking, well, let's have Steve fall in the mud this time. Let's have him walk around barefoot in the rain, and he's thinking that's really cool. And he's seeing stuff in the water flowing, that's all really cool. And then he steps on something and realizes, oh, it's a sticker. And so, reaches down and plucks the sticker out and thinks, okay, I got it. And then like for 3 weeks later, the ball of his foot, like this part right here. Right in here somewhere, I think it was a mesquite thorn. And it might have been 2 of them, but I don't know. And then I don't know what to make of the story. This is the problem. We sort of, even ayahuasca told me this, says, don't try to figure it out too much because it's just too big. There's too many things happening at once. You can't get to cause easily because there's a lot of causation going on. There's a diversity of causations causing all of this. It's like a big, grand, holographic, back and forth, super referencing deal. And so, this one reference that I am can't totally get the spreadsheet on 5% this, 10% that, 20% that, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of stuff. I mean, it's okay to look for cause, but wow, so much we don't know. And life is what happens while we're busy researching what we think is important. So like I was saying, I forgot that, I didn't finish it. Sometimes when I'm working and I may normally be in the momentum of just sort of madly going, psychically going from room to room and checklist to checklist and, heaving the hoe, schlepping, being a good little schlepper, which sometimes I'm very depressed that that's really what my life amounts to. It's just sort of schlepping. But on the other hand, I get into it like it's a big deal. So there's different programs there. One program is very convincingly hot to trot to go do all this room service, and just sort of like make sure the bathtub's clean, and I know how to do it. It's not that hard. And, you move your body and you move some stuff and pretty soon you get this clean bathtub. Ooh, that's cool. Not because anyone really made me. That's the other thing. Like, I'm somehow made up where I don't really like being given orders, but I sort of like being given requests that I then contemplate about what I could do about the request. Like, it's a lot about wishes. Course in Miracles says that too. It says, go ahead and give people what they want, because that's why we're here. We're here to complete things. And until you've really completed them, then you think you have to keep doing it. And that's what they also said, the forum leader said in the forum, which came after Est. I asked him, so what's it all about, Alfie? Kind of a question. And he goes, well, that's a good question. It's about completing things, he said. Life, being in the world, is about completing things. Well, then it's also about process. I'd say it's more about process than completing. But you're only drawn to process if it feels incomplete. So I guess it is about being in process among incomplete interests until you're complete with them. And that could be drugs or sex or food or getting attention. There's a million things to expand into. Another guy recently said to me, he goes, it all really comes down to how much you're willing to expand. So, not that you have to. Although we do really. You have to breathe, and breathing is expanding. You're breathing in, you're breathing out, and you're not paying much attention to it, but you're doing it, and your heart's beating. So you're pumping and you're expanding. So you're doing that just sitting still. So we don't really fully rest in this world. It's a restless world. And I think that's why we come. In a way to kind of play daredevil in a restless world. And some of us do it very elegantly, where it's not really that daredevilish, and they seem to flow with it pretty painlessly. I was hoping to be kind of on that side of the spectrum where I wasn't that pained by the world, and more I could just kind of sneak in the good stuff. But then you realize kind of the pain is part of the good stuff, because it's a focus. And it's a sort of urgent motivation to expand. All right, 57 minutes. That's about an hour. That's about what people listen to. I listen to things for an hour. So I wanted to kind of do this to say, well, here's kind of how I think. I've gotten to kind of this stuff. And, it's some legacy, I guess. If people want to know me, what's he look like? What's he think? How's he think? How's he use his voice? How does he articulate? Is he comfortable? Does he have anything to say? Is he on to something? Should I have him on my show? He's a nobody. He has no title. But he is the one, because we're all the one. And he's got some kind of reference about talking about the one that's kind of cool, because I'm not saying you should just go be void or be crazy manic. I'm saying, it's all there. It's all there to play. And you're going to swing there based on all kinds of factors that make it irresistible not to go that way, because the story's been created and you're now playing the story. And you're now getting to live the story, because it was first thought and now it's being manifest in process. So the point is to sort of play these funny waves of process, seems like. And so then I got on here to kind of start talking about cannabis being something that invites you to participate. And it can also then retract you away from participation, where participation looks very fraught and very difficult and very tedious and not fun. So it totally expands you to the euphoria of the wonderland and the expansion into it and the capacity to really take it in. And then it contracts you into like, oh, can I just go back to nothing? All this somethingness is such a bother. So I think that's enough for now. Eye to eye, eyeing in and eyeing out.